Hello and welcome. Today I am going to be giving you my review of Hawkeye episodes 1 and 2. Now, the structure of this video is going to be starting with non-spoiler, and then I will be going into more of a spoilery kind of territory as we go on. I will let you know and I'll give you plenty of time to clear off if you don't want to be spoiled for this as well. However, we are going to start with the non-spoilers and basically kind of give you a little bite-sized chunk of it if you are still wondering whether you should give this show a go. So without further ado, let's get into it. One of the key themes, at least in the first two episodes, seem to be kind of this bridging of the old and the new. If you are a Marvel fan, there is more for you here. It opens in a way that makes it very clear that we are entering a new era, and the Hawkeye mythos and the Hawkeye character is kind of being moved somewhere else, moved into a different direction. There is a particular scene in the first episode that really nicely juxtaposes the kind of light-hearted Marvel while at the same time demonstrating the consequences of Endgame. Something I would say, if you are kind of coming to this Hawkeye show and expecting a lot of Hawkeye that we know, Clint, you're going to be disappointed, mate. The show itself pretty much centers on Hailee Steinfeld's character, Kate Bishop. Not necessarily a bad thing at all. I think Hailee Steinfeld's really charismatic, really fun. I think, honestly, when the show shines, it's when Hailee and Jeremy Renner, Clint, are together and bouncing off of each other, and there's that kind of youthful wonder and hope versus his brooding sadness. I think that does work quite well together. It makes you kind of feel sad and hopeful at the same time because you have these two faces of the same coin. I think at least for the first two episodes, that holds the show together. I think outside of that, it doesn't really hold up that strongly. There are action sequences in the show. In the first few episodes, it's kind of minimum. I was kind of struggling to kind of work out when she was fighting, how much of the lack of excitement there was in those fights was down to them trying to make her seem new and more like a beginner, like she's finding her feet. Because honestly, the combat was generally quite slow. And even when there are scenes with Clint, who is Hawkeye, this very capable fighter, the actual combat in the show wasn't that inspiring. I found that the first two episodes, they're very teasy, that like not much actually happens. It's a lot of establishing stuff, a lot of foundational stuff, which is to be expected. Something that I would say about the antagonism in the show and the antagonist that we are introduced to is that there, like, not much is given away at first, but there is a certain part of it, a large part of it, that's very unoriginal. It happened and I kind of rolled my eyes. It's very obvious. I feel like going forward they need to do something a little bit more with that, which kind of left me with a taste in my mouth that the larger plot going forward is going to be quite run-of-the-mill. I think there are big parts of the show given over to the sillier side of Marvel. I think there is enough in the relationship so far between Clint and Kate that holds the show together so far. And their back and forth is quite entertaining, quite nice to see. And you see that there is a nurturing influence from Clint. And that is just quite nice. The one thing I will say is that the hired thugs, the hired goons of the in the show are amazing. Again, it's silly Marvel, but it's silly Marvel done well. If you are looking for an easy watch, Hawkeye is absolutely that. With that, I'll wrap up the non-spoiler section of this review and say that the first two episodes are quite slow, and overall plot-wise it's quite dissatisfying, at least to start off with some fun moments mixed in there, a strong kind of duo in Clint and Kate. And at the end of the day, these are establishing episodes where we are kind of setting up what is to come afterwards. If you're deciding whether you want to watch this or not, honestly, if you're into the sillier side of Marvel, give it a go. It's something that I think scratches that itch. If you are a Marvel fan, I think you are going to get more out of these if you've seen the previous films. If you're coming in brand new, there's still stuff to be enjoyed, but I don't know that there's necessarily a good standalone show here so far. Okay, for the next minute or so, I am going to just talk spoilers. So if you haven't seen the show, please be gone and make yourself scarce, and I will give you plenty of time to do that. If you haven't watched the show and you do go watch the show after this, then I hope you enjoy it, and thank you for coming and watching the video. Now, for those of you who have not seen the show, I'm going to assume you've gone, so I'm going to talk spoilers now, so prep yourselves. Yeah, something that when I was watching the show, it's very small, it's very inconsequential. Look, like, Marvel seem to be wanting to go the progressive way. They have talked about, you know, representing women more in film. Black Panther came out, which represented people of colour. So they seem to be conscious of that, quite, you know, self-aware of that, and wanting to kind of be progressive in their films. There was a moment in the show where Kate was wearing a tux and a man came over And it was a very small moment, a very small comment, but it kind of made me go, what? And I know Armand was supposed to be the bad guy, but he came over and said, like, you know, please wear something more ladylike next time I see you. Considering the progressive nature of where Marvel seems to be wanting to go with their films, which, by the way, good, it seemed a little bit tone deaf, and it seemed like a little bit odd, because I felt like Kate was going to pipe up. She's quite a headstrong, confident character and calls out bullshit when she sees it. And I was expecting her to say, like, excuse me, sir, can you fuck off, please? And she didn't. And we just kind of skimmed over that moment. And I found that really dissatisfying. And I didn't feel like they did it very well. Didn't feel like it was handled very well. Yeah, came across as a little bit tone deaf. Slightly disappointing, I'll be honest with you. Following on from that, Kate's character comes from a rich background. And I don't know about you, but I'm just kind of sick of the rich billionaire, millionaire, fortunate, wealthy, privileged hero. Maybe that's what she is in the comics, and absolutely fine. Speaking as someone who isn't as familiar with the comics, I just found that trope a little bit weary. It didn't particularly help to endear her to me. It's still too early to tell whether the show will be self-conscious of that. The thing that most excites me about this show is the Ronin element and the kind of darker side of Hawkeye that we saw in Endgame. So we saw like the suit, and honestly, when Kate got the suit, that was a moment where I felt excited to see her journey going forward. It felt like we were getting the formative kind of moments of a hero, which I quite enjoyed. And then also, you know, the introduction of the Ronin side made it obvious that the show was going to deal with that and have Clint deal with that as well, because obviously he's interacting with Kate and they're talking about it. And something that's interesting is that no one knows who Ronin is. So obviously that's going to get revealed, and we're going to deal with that and dive into that more. And so the intrigue that kind of introduced the show was really, really interesting, and something that does make me want to watch and keep watching, and worked really well, at least for me. Coupled with the fact that he needs a hearing aid now, it shows us that there are consequences, and it's showing us the human side of the, I guess, the weaker heroes, those that do get injured and feel things more. I think we're seeing that from Clint's side from like a mental health perspective, but also from a physical perspective, and I quite liked that. And it showed that the human members of the Avengers and the human members of the Marvel Cinematic Universe are human. So I think for me, the deeper through line of the show will be that aspect to it, and Clint going through that journey. Yeah, something that I will say and elaborate on is the antagonists. We see Jack, who is essentially going to marry Kate's mum. It's very soap opera, very dramatic, very obvious. He's very obviously the bad guy, unless that turns out to be a red herring, which I don't think it is. I found myself rolling my eyes. I was like, of course he's the villain. Of course he's the bad guy. And then obviously with the lady at the end of episode 2, the leader of the tracksuits, who again, and I cannot stress enough, the tracksuits were one of the best things about the show. So yeah, to wrap up, I would just again say, you know, the highlights of the show are is the relationship between Clint and Kate. I think Kate's a really strong character. I think Hayley's doing a really good job. I think she's charismatic, she's funny, and I like Clint's role in their relationship as this nurturing, kind of caring person. And I think that is what the show is going to be centered around. I think that's what is going to stand the show in like really good stead. If there is a nugget of something really good about this show, I think that's going to be where it comes from, because I think everything else around it seems to be quite weak. Like I say, the combat scenes, they don't really excite me, or they haven't so far. With that, I'll leave this review here. I hope you've enjoyed, and if you have liked the video, please do consider liking, subscribing, hitting the notification button. I do also have movie commentaries, TV commentaries as well, so if you've enjoyed this, feel free to go check that out. Other than that, thank you very much, and hopefully I will see you in the next one.